Next we have Standards New Zealand, local government standing orders, and got Katie who's going to come and give us an update on where we're at with that. Welcome.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just apologies, I need to leave early. So just, want to let you know. Thanks.
Well, it was the first race on or something, is it?
No, I just need to go to school for an appointment.
Thank you, everyone. Right, Katie, the floor is yours, mate.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou, councillors. So today I'm going to provide an update on the proposed local government standing orders, or the LGSO, which is currently out for consultation. I will present the key changes between the council's current standing orders and the proposed LGSO as well. And today's workshop is really aimed at assisting you with any feedback that you may wish to provide when the draft submission is presented at next Tuesday's workshop. You might have to. All right, I hope that's where we need to be. Okay, great. So a bit of background to begin. As we know, as Tom just spoke about, the recent System Improvements Amendment Bill empowers the Secretary to issue a standardized set of standing orders. To progress this, the Department of Internal Affairs commissioned Standards New Zealand to establish a development committee to review the existing model SO, and that's NZS 9202, and develop a standardized version. The development committee is made up of 10 individuals, 6 of which represent various councils across the country. The work of the committee has culminated in the proposed LGSO that is currently out for consultation. Of note, these are intended for all territorial authorities, regional councils, community boards, and all types of local authorities as defined under the LGA. I will note that work was already underway to revise and refresh the council's current standing orders, which were last updated in 2017. So we were well positioned to feed back into the committee's work. Some general items and additions of the LGSO. Their framework differs from the council's current standing orders in a number of ways. One of the more pronounced omissions is the removal of the principal section. So this has been a long-standing section in standing orders across councils, which has provided context and guided interpretation by delineating the hallmarks of good governance. The structure and format of the LGSO also differ significantly from our current standing orders. The structure of the proposed LGSO is intended to improve usability and is broken down into 10 parts versus our current 3 parts. And it offers more specific headings rather than generic subject areas. The LGSO is generally structured to follow the flow of the meeting and makes more use of detailed subsections and cross-references throughout. And so this actually improves navigability. The proposed LGSO also offer general clarifications of process throughout, and some of these I will touch on specifically later. Next. Great. So as mentioned earlier, perhaps one of the most impactful changes reflected in the LGSO is that they would be applied, mandated for all councils and community boards. However, there are 3 aspects of the draft that have been designated as discretionary matters for councils to decide. So these are the procedure for speaking and moving and seconding motion and amendments, the provision of a casting vote, and time limits applicable to debate and public participation. The proposed LGSO establish a default provision for each of these discretionary matters, which is what you'll see in the current draft, but provides that councils may adopt an alternative when adopting the LGSO. Another general change is related to the duration of a meeting. The proposed LGSO mandates that meetings cannot continue beyond 6 hours, including adjournments. This is versus our current 8 hours. It also specifies that breaks are required every 2 hours as well versus our current 3 hours. So the only way to get around this is whether for the meeting to resolve otherwise. So finally, the LGSO incorporates a number of sections that our current standing orders do not. These are legislatively prescribed, so nothing completely new. And they are regarding appointments, elections, delegations, and reflect updated legislative provisions around emergency meetings. Regarding meeting agenda, the substantive provisions of Section 5 of the LGSO related to the meeting agenda are largely consistent with our current standing orders. However, there are 2 key changes here. One new section provides that the chief executive may delay or refuse to commission reports that involve significant cost or resource unless the governing body resolves otherwise. The CE would also be able to exercise this discretion if the report is beyond the scope of the body that makes the request. The LGSO further provides that the CE may refuse a direct report request from an individual member, which is generally consistent with current practice across councils, but is now stated in standing orders. The second change relates to the provisions around withdrawing an agenda item. So while this provision is not entirely new, the proposed LGSO makes a key distinction. The CE may only withdraw a report that they have put forward or that is staff generated. If an elected member puts forward a report, such as a notice of motion, only the sponsoring member can withdraw that report. We will move on to public participation. The proposed LGSO makes several updates and changes to the public participation sections that offer some much needed clarity around process. These changes include specifying that public forum and deputation requests should be made at least 1 clear working day before the meeting. It also establishes a default 5-minute speaking allocation for all public forum, deputation, and petition presenters. I will note, however, that this is one of those discretionary items that councils can tailor when adopting the standing orders. So additionally, the LGSO continued to provide the chairperson with a number of discretionary matters. So this includes extending those speaking timeframes, waiving the requirement for submitting a request, amongst other things. So the flexibility that we are used to in this space still exists. The LGSO also has some additional discretionary areas where a public participation request may be declined. So notably, one such area is where the matter has already been considered by a committee or community board where public participation was available. So you'll be most familiar with this scenario as it pertains to Part A reports that then are considered at the council. Other discretionary areas where requests may be declined include the decision-making authority where that rests with another body or where it is in contravention to council policy or other applicable legislative requirements. A few more things to mention about public participation. There are further updates, including a new section on the hearing of submissions, such as for the annual plan or LTP, which established default timeframes. Again, these would be at the discretion of council to vary. And finally, there have been some much needed updates to the petition section. It acknowledges that electronic petitions are acceptable. It removes the requirement that petitions contain no more than 150 words and establishes the same restrictions around public forums and deputations. So again, the chair will retain the discretion to waive certain requirements around petitions if they deem it reasonable. The proposed LGSO include updated provisions around AV attendance, which they refer to as an electronic link. This is to align with the somewhat recent legislative changes, which allow AV attendance to count towards quorum. The draft also contains more explicit wording around requests and conditions for attending via AV, including that members must give the chairperson and CE 2 working days notice when they want to attend via AV. And the chair may give approval if the member is at a place that makes their attendance physically impossible, is unwell, or is unable to attend due to an emergency. So notably, the LGSO also strengthens conflict of interest provisions. So the draft specifies that members must physically withdraw themselves from the table for both financial and non-financial conflicts of interest, and they must leave the room if the matter is public excluded. It also clarifies that the nature of a member's conflict does not need to be disclosed and that non-participation in the vote is not considered an abstention. Questions and debate. So the proposed LGSO makes some welcome updates to the debate section. One of these relates to more clearly outlining the process of questions to staff before debate. As this is the process that we currently endeavor to follow in our own meetings, it's good to see this delineation more clearly reflected in the draft. The LGSO also provides additional clarity around the chair's discretion when addressing questions. Where our current SO provides that the chair has the discretion to determine how a question is dealt with, the LGSO also specifies that the chair has the discretion to determine whether a question is in order and whether further questions can be put to staff once debate has begun. A further process improvement is the LGSO's clarification that once an item is tabled for consideration, members may signal at any time that they would like to move and second a motion related to that item. So this aligns with current practice and again is a welcome clarification in the draft. As mentioned earlier, the procedure for speaking and moving and seconding motions and amendments has been designated as a discretionary matter. The LGSO sets out a default, which is commonly referred to as option B. This is a more lenient option that is generally utilized by smaller councils or boards. So again, the council currently employs option A and would be able to elect that option when standing up standing orders. Debate continued. So a few more items in this section. The default speaking allocation is 3 minutes for all members during debate. So currently we employ a 5-3-2 framework, which is 5 minutes for the mover, 3 for every other member, and a 2-minute right of reply. So the default framework therefore amounts to only 1 minute less speaking time for movers during debate. The LGSO also includes updated requirements for raising an amendment. These are aimed at ensuring amendments meet the decision-making requirements of the LGA and aren't undermining earlier decision-making of the meeting or another body. So thus, an amendment that is in conflict with an already carried amendment or that negates a decision that was made under delegated authority can be ruled out of order. So in practice, again, this is already happening. So the explicit reference in SO is a welcome process clarification. Finally, we were happy to see improvements to the foreshadowed motion and amendment provisions. The definition more clearly defines the intent and use of these types of motions and amendments. Other clarifications in the LGSO note that a seconder is not required at the time a foreshadowed motion or amendment is raised, and that the chair has the discretion to direct a single debate, which is often the case in our current climate. So as again, we have been supportive of some of this additional clarity. Procedural motions and points of order. The LGSO updates to these include further process clarifications. An important one is that a PM may be moved at any time an item is tabled for consideration. So our current SO limit a member's ability to move a procedural motion until the meeting is in debate, which has presented some practical challenges in the past. So from a process standpoint, it makes sense that should the meeting wish to proceed with a procedural motion, it shouldn't be required to first enter debate to do so. Of course, the one exception here is the procedural motion related to a closure motion. The LGSO helpfully clarifies that a closure motion cannot be raised unless the meeting is in debate, and there have been 2 members for and 2 members against the motion or amendment. Further, the LGSO newly specifies that procedural motions are to be limited to advancing those procedural-based directives for which they are meant. So this is to let an item lie on the table, to refer it to another body, to adjourn the meeting, etc. So the aim here is that procedural motions should not be used as a vehicle for other substantive requests, such as further consultation, additional workshops, etc. Finally, a few changes around points of order. First, if a point is raised and concerns the performance of the chairperson, the chair will refer that point to the deputy chair, or in their absence, the meeting will elect a member who will then consider that point and rule on it. There's also a new point related to the criticism of resolutions. Current SO already provide that members cannot unduly criticize the validity of a resolution except in one circumstance, but the LGSO now include a mechanism by which members can raise a breach of the standing order. Notice of motions. So we are happy to see that the draft LGSO maintains the 10 clear working day timeframe for submitting noms, and this aligns with the current council resolution. What's newly outlined is that noms will now require a seconder. So given the amount of time and resource that a nom may require, the LGSO's call for a seconder helps ensure that a nom has the required support to proceed at a meeting, the same as any other motion or amendment. The LGSO also fleshes out some of the reasons for which a nom may be declined. These include where the nom contains offensive language or statements are made with malice, is ambiguous, or contains a statement of fact of opinion that cannot form an effective resolution. That exists currently in our SO, but there's an additional clause that provides, and the mover and seconder are declining to comply with the requirements made by the chief executive to address those ambiguities or inconsistencies. The further rounded out is where the matter is on the agenda or the subject of forthcoming reports, or where the matter does not satisfy the LGA or contravenes other legislative requirements. I will note that the LGSO does remove the discretion to decline a nom where it may have significant funding or reputational risk to council. So this has been taken out of the list of reasons. Just a couple more things to cover off with respect to notice of motions. Where a nom relates to a matter that sits with another body, a community board, for example, the LGSO provide that the CE will refer the nom to that body. It further clarifies that the mover of the nom has a right to raise it at the applicable meeting, but if they are not a member of that body, they cannot participate in the vote. Finally, the LGSO includes updated provisions around repeat notices of motion. It now clarifies that where a nom has been declined by the CE, fails for a lack of seconder, or is declared lost, no nom may be accepted within the next 12 months unless supported by 1/3 of the membership. So finally, some final further guidance needed. The amendments bill is, as Tom mentioned, still with the select committee with the report on the bill for the House due on the 25th of November. I believe the intention is that the model standing orders be stood up at or around the same time as the bill. So the tentative timeline that's been shared with the committee is for late February, early March publication. Before final publication, the development committee will consider consultation feedback and conduct a ballot vote. The draft will then progress to the standards approval board for its final sign off. One thing I will highlight as well, one of the most concerning outstanding issues is that Standard New Zealand employs an incredibly prescriptive rules around the use and distribution of its standards. It requires written permission to copy or reproduce any of the content or to distribute it. So stringent copyright provisions also prevent them from being made available online. In order to secure a copy of the standard or download it, you must purchase it. They're expensive. So there are fines for infringement, up to $10,000 per copy. And so I will just note that these are issues that arose the last time a mandated set of standing orders was provided by Standards New Zealand. So as such, the member councils have raised significant concerns around being mandated a set of standing orders that cannot be shared with the public or reproduced for the use of elected members or staff. So this accessibility issue still requires clarification and direction from Standards and DIA.
Questions. Can I just actually acknowledge Katie? Katie has been a member of that working group,
Yeah, she's it.
and has worked diligently, attending every meeting and putting forward our views, and gathered up views from the team as well that have gone forward. So thank you for all your work on that.
Thanks.
Right. We have 3 questions. Tyrone first.
Yeah, thank you. It was just around actually just conflicts of interest in that. Like, so the whole thing about like stepping, sometimes we have decisions that involve like, I don't know, Well, yes. I'm just trying to think. So basically, like half the people at the table have got a conflict of interest at the same time, and we go, oh, we know, it'll be like something to do with the Rod Donald Trust, and plus something that Kelly might be on, and it's kind of like in noting the councillor's conflict of interest. Do we have to? I mean, there's a bit of a rigmarole in us all sort of like stepping away from the table as we do that. If we don't do that, then we're obviously opening ourselves up for whatever it is. So do we have to? So we can't do that anymore, basically?
Under the LGSO, you would be required to physically remove yourself from the table. So I know the DIA has raised concerns around other councils and their handling of conflicts of interest. So this is the attempt to strengthen these provisions and provide clarity to members about how to manage these during a meeting.
Right. So we have to be much more deliberate in the way that we step away. Like, okay, that's good to know. Tim?
Thank you. On slide 13, under notice of motion, the refusals, etc., the ambiguity of statement of fact, opinion that cannot form effective resolution, because at times individuals will say, oh, I've heard da da da, and they read it as a statement of fact. So the chair or whoever's running the meeting can actually say that's out of order. Is that what we're talking?
So what would essentially happen is if a NOM is put forward that would hit kind of this restriction, us as governance staff would actually seek to work with you on the wording of that notice of motion so that we're covering off any of those ambiguities or those statement of facts or opinion that might not be consistent. So we would do that in the first instance. If you as a mover or seconder of a NOM refuse to on your wording, then that provides the chief executive with the discretion to decline that NOM because it wouldn't stand on its own as a resolution that the council could make.
That's partly why you've got 10 days to look at it and come up with and kind of give that heads up.
Yes, that's certainly one aspect. The NOMs themselves, depending on what they are, could require a significant amount of staff time and resource to respond to. So it's actually to benefit of both elected members and staff to have that additional time because we want to give you the information you need to make the decision. So we look to progress that, within what's still a rather stringent time frame.
Oh, and thank you very much for your work, Katie. Cheers.
Pleasure.
Pauline, please.
Yeah, thank you. So how many are on the working group, Katie, and where are they from?
Yeah, so 10 individuals total. 6 of those are from councils, including us. So there's Nelson, Porirua, the Far North District Council, Auckland, and Bay of Plenty Regional Council.
And the other 4 are what?
The other 4 members, so there's 1 from the Local Government Commission, another from Taituara, 2 from LGNZ, and there was a DIA representative as well, and 2 reps from Standards New Zealand.
Thanks. And has there been done any work on defining conflict of interest? So obviously if you've got a pecuniary interest, I fully understand that, or perhaps political gain from something. But when I think what Tyrone was referring to, when we sit around the table representing, or we have represented council on an organisation, let's say like the Conservation Trust at Next Peninsula, we're precluded from engaging. That seems to me wrong. Is there any work done on defining the conflict of interest and the parameters of that?
Not within this standing orders exercise. So conflicts of interest have long been for the members to manage themselves in the sense that it is up to you, especially for a non-financial conflict of interest, to determine whether your participation in an organization or your association with another organization or individual is going to put your decision-making ability or balance at risk. So we as staff, the meeting itself cannot say that you, Pauline, are conflicted.
You tend to guide us. I mean, for instance, take CCHL. That's automatically, it was you, Sam and Mel sit back from the table. Whereas for me, that falls into that category of you're our liaison people on there. You're the ones best actually placed to give us advice anyway.
But that has changed so they can speak and give advice, but just can't vote. That's what I understood.
Yeah, but you should be able to vote as well.
our legal eagle clarify.
So I think what Councillor Scandrett was referring to is that staying for the purposes of answering questions, but not participating in the vote, participating in the debate and the vote. That's the point, I think, to clarify.
Yeah.
But the perception of bias is a long-standing principle of common law, and it's the overlapping duties with roles in different organisations which come into play. So the perception of bias is not necessarily actual bias, but if you've got a view because you're part of one organisation, how that may affect decision making in another organisation.
I wonder
Does
if we do a
place-
workshop on this
Yeah.
rather than trying to cover it off. with a
Yeah, it
question.
places us in a very difficult situation. If you're passionate about an organisation, even let's say one of the zone committees, and you're on there and we come to a decision about our water, you're inclined not to go onto that committee because it's going to stop you from voting. So I think that's kind of really important here. We figure that out. Yeah.
That's beyond the scope of what the standing orders are looking at, I may suggest.
Yet it crosses over because it's in here. So it's in here saying what you can and can't do if you have a conflict. Until we have that definition of conflict defined properly, we're obliged
Nathaniel,
to
please.
leave the room.
If you keep asking questions, you'll get some conflict here.
I just clarification on the copyright stuff, because I find this completely bizarre. So we will have our own sort of customized standing orders based on this one, but with specifics around, meeting length time, that sort of thing, right?
You asked a question I wish I had a clearer answer to. The reason for that is we're still awaiting guidance as to how this is going to work from a practical perspective. You'll see that the draft LGSO still has the language that council will adopt the standing orders. However, we recognize that if the standing orders are in fact mandated, what is there really to adopt other than those discretionary provisions? With respect to the copyright, we have been informed that those would still be applicable, but the DIA, I believe, in Standard New Zealand are still nutting out the concerns that have been raised by councils as to some of the restrictions around it.
So it could be, it could be that we have standing orders that no member of the public is able to access without paying for them. And they wouldn't even be accessible on the websites of DIA or Standards New Zealand. That's possible. It's sort of
It is
within the
an
current-
eventuality.
Yeah.
That would be the poorest outcome,
Okay.
obviously.
Crazy.
Yes,
Right.
but
Thank you.
Melanie has the last question.
One, so would this apply to community boards? Because they have a little bit of my experience, are generally a bit more relaxed and don't follow quite a precise protocol.
yes. So
Yes.
yes, they would be applicable to the boards as well. Now, I think the discretionary aspects of the model, if you will, the boards would also be able to adjust those. So if they wanted, example, I know some boards provide their chairs with the casting vote. I think a board would be able to stand that provision up as they normally would. If they wanted a different debate structure, they could, when standing orders, adopt that more relaxed type of debate structure. But outside of those discretionary items, the bulk of the LGSO would still be mandated across whatever body they would be applying to.
Okay. And then the referral of a notice of motion, that sounded to me like if one of us cares about buses, we can trot off to ECAT and tell them what a notice of motion is, and then they can decide whether they like that's what I heard, but have I understood that incorrectly?
I think the provision contemplates more within a body within the council family, so to speak, but it's a question that might be further clarified. Whether ECAN would accept a notice of motion from a councillor.
That's how it reads. Then what if we don't follow this accurately, if it's mandated? Like, are they going to be watching every meeting, and then like what happens if you just have a disaster of a meeting one day?
Yeah, again, it's a question for which there's been little guidance or clarity offered. So what kind of enforcement mechanism the DA might look to employ if these aren't being followed is just a hanging question mark.
Okay, and then final one on the copyright thing. So if the public can't come and do a public forum, and then the reason something in the standing orders, do they get told for the reason why they can't come?
We can tell them why their request would be declined. If they asked to see it in writing, we could potentially be in breach of that copyright.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Katie, for the work you've done so far in bringing this to us. I'm sure it's not easy to go through the working group stuff that you've had to go through, and all the work you'll continue to do to bring it to us when we vote on maybe putting submissions in.
You will see the draft submission next Tuesday. I'll be back here, and then you will, depending on the feedback that you provide, the draft will be updated and presented at the council meeting on the 3rd of December.
Roger. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, Katie. So that brings us to the end of today's workshop. So thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow.